Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is a Ten2Two webinar on managing your personal online brand and job hunting. For those of you who don't know us, we're Ten2Two, and we're a specialist recruitment agency, and we focus on flexible and part-time working. So we've got some expertise in this area, and we're going to share some of that with you tonight. I'm Tracy Adams, one of the directors here at Ten2Two, and I'll be the co-host. We will follow this up tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow afternoon, with a short handout. So please don't feel you need to scribble copious notes. And as we go through the session, if you've got any questions, please do put them in the Q&A. I'll interrupt John if there's lots of questions coming out about a particular topic, or we'll save them to the end. We've got 30 minutes of talking and then 10 minutes for questions. So we'll do a few more questions at the end as well, and we will follow up with further FAQs tomorrow. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our presenter this evening, who is John O'Sullivan. He's Ten2Two's founder, and I'm going to hand over to you, John. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Tracy, and good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining. We've got lots of people on the webinar already, and we do appreciate you coming on. It's a very, I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's a very miserable evening here. So hopefully, as Tracy said, you are sitting down, comfy chair, glass of wine, or as I've got, cloudy apple juice, or as I like to call it, non-alcoholic cider. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll go on with that. And as Tracy says, I'm going to probably talk for about 25 minutes. And I'll just run through an agenda in a couple of quick seconds. So let's see if I can find my slides. Here we go. So Tracy, if you can just let me know when that goes on to presentation mode. Yep. Perfect. Thank you very much. So as Tracy said, and hopefully this is what you're expecting, we're just going to talk about your online personal brand. And it's a strange phrase, your personal brand online. But hopefully all will become clear in the next few minutes. So what we're going to cover is we're just going to very quickly talk about social media work and the whole job hunting and how social media affects that. And also how, just very quickly for a minute or two, just on how social media and the working environment have just sort of very much merged together, and the importance for everyone, particularly if you've had a break in your career, whether that's a year or two or more, just to sort of understand what's going on. We'll just then touch on about refining and maintaining your personal brand, and we will focus very much on LinkedIn. And love it or hate it, it is the sort of destination, sort of form of social media for professionals and for organizations. There's an awful lot of recruitment that happens through LinkedIn, but outside of direct LinkedIn recruitment, LinkedIn is the place that is pretty much involved in, I think, probably about 90% of recruitment processes one way or the other. And then we'll do a quick Q&A, as Tracy said. So let's just quickly talk about workplace communications and social media. Over the last few years, I don't know if many of you that have joined us recognize any of those brands or those interfaces that were on the slide there. So we've got things like Teams, which many of you may have used, particularly in the last couple of years since the first lockdown. Similar to Slack, sort of collaboration and conversation tools that happen in the workplace that very much have grown out of the sort of Facebook chat and Snapchat, those types of things, where businesses have said, actually, the best place for people to communicate and the most effective place is how they're doing it in their daily lives. So let's try and bring that into the workplace. So very much now, I mean, there are some organizations, including a company that I run at the moment called eBay. You could get maybe 2 emails a day because everything else is done through these tools. Similarly, if you think about social media itself, I put a post there from somebody I've worked with, and a friend of mine called Lisa. Her name is Lisa, but she's Lisi Lees on Instagram. And actually, if you do use LinkedIn, quite often now people are starting to put personal stories on LinkedIn, and it used to be very, very corporate. And it's become a little bit more personal now. People talk about mental health. People talk about their environment in the workplace. Just even putting pictures of their dog when they're in the meeting, that type of thing. And sometimes I look at LinkedIn and I don't know whether I'm on Instagram or I'm on LinkedIn. So the thing to be aware of, I think, when you're thinking about, how you behave online and what you do, is that these areas sort of very much merging, and I think particularly now that, so many people are working from home, they start come together. So with that in mind, how you represent yourself is incredibly important. When I first started doing social media seminars, probably 10 years ago with Ten2Two, I went out and asked some people, what I should include. And Heather Townsend, who's a networking expert and an author, the phrase she came back with was the one you can see on the slide there. You need to control your personal brand online. So that's one thing. But the most important thing is the second sentence, which says, don't let the market and people make assumptions about you. So if you're not controlling it and you're not portraying yourself properly, it does allow people, because they're not with you, they're not face to face, to make certain assumptions about you, to judge elements of your character. And that may be right or it may be wrong, but it is what it is. So when that does happen, you have to try and make sure that you're in control of it, rather than allow other people to judge or to make assumptions about you. And when I talk about controlling your brand, I don't mean being out there and being very active and, going on social media, on things like LinkedIn every day. It's all about how you want to do it. So you can take different approaches. You can be, and I'll talk about this, neutral and positive position. You just do something which reflects your character, reflects what you like to do, reflects what people think about you. And whatever approach you take, just make sure that you control it, and as I've said in the slide there, you avoid rejection or creating any concern from a recruiter when you're job hunting. So let me quickly run through these sort of three areas. So the first one is a positive position, and that is when you choose to get out there and promote your skills, promote your personality, and allow what you place online to reflect the real you. So if you are gregarious, if you do love being with people, you love being with friends, you're more than likely very active on social media, and that's great. Be like that on things like LinkedIn. But if you're not like that, then sometimes that can be awkward. It can be difficult. You don't know what to say. You don't know how to do it. So you might not want to portray yourself as being overly positive and overly out there, if that's not the person you are. There is a neutral position, which is you just do what you like to do online and do what you feel you need to do online, but make sure that whatever you do doesn't conflict with your professional self. So even if it is at a low level, you have to make sure that you balance, things that you're doing in a professional environment like LinkedIn with what you may be doing on Instagram or Facebook or something. And so if you portray yourself in those channels in one particular way, make sure it doesn't conflict with how you behave on LinkedIn. Now, these days, you can lock down your Instagram account, you can lock down your Facebook page, and you can make sure that people don't see whatever you don't want them to see in some of those channels. But whether you are out there or whether you just like to have a lower key presence, just understand and keep in mind that that's who you are and that's how you like to do. And just avoid that negative position where it does clash, where you are presenting a certain self, but you may be trying to portray something different. So, for example, I'll give an example of if someone I was looking at the other day who was in sales or said they were in sales, and when I looked at their LinkedIn profile, they had about 30 or 40 connections. They didn't have a picture. And actually, I thought, generally, you're not in sales. Or if you are in sales, you're probably not very good, because when you're in sales, you're on LinkedIn all the time. And so therefore, you create a conflict, and you're therefore not in control of that. I'm making assumptions about that person. Similarly on marketing, whenever I'm looking at a marketing professional, I go and see if I can see their Instagram page. I can go and see what content they're producing, what they're talking about, whether they're talking about other campaigns, if they are showing an interest in that area. So if you're not portraying that, it creates a negative position. So just bear in mind in the back of your head, the position that you're taking and remaining constant with it. I picked this one out that I saw on LinkedIn a little while ago, and this is very much about this conscious positive management. It was someone called Holly who was in sales. She did a post which says, "Oh, it's bad news. I'm being made redundant. I really want to get out there again. I think I can offer a lot." She gave this sort of heartfelt post, and you'll see there that she had 139 comments, shares, loads of messages of support from the people that she knew. And just in that main panel there, she says, "While I'm not tooting my own horn here, I do believe my personal brand has a big part to play in the levels of engagement and number of job offers I received. So here's another reason to build your brand if you aren't already." And I think this is a great example of, through LinkedIn, there are probably many people that many people that you've worked with before that can help you either to find a job, to look at your CV for you, to give you some pointers about whether you should stay in your sector or not stay in your sector. The network of people that you've ever worked with are probably on LinkedIn. So it's a great place to be active and to go and elicit and ask for support. So let's talk about LinkedIn for a minute. I'm just going to cover a couple of things about really, the sort of minimum way or the best way to portray yourself. And just some stats there. LinkedIn talk about that the world's largest professional network, helping people find and share opportunities every day. So it's not just all about jobs. It's about how LinkedIn can support your professional career and how LinkedIn can support your not just your professional career in terms of jobs, but also the work that you do in your professional career. So they've got 23 million members in the UK. And how many people are the working population in the UK? It's about 27 million, I think. So pretty much everybody that is in some form of professional or management capacity is on LinkedIn in one way or the other. Yeah. So what's the best way of bringing it to life? So a couple of things just to bear in mind. When you are applying for roles, whether it's through an agency like Ten2Two or whether it's direct, and you submit CV, then people will go and look at LinkedIn. So they might not look at all the CVs they get, but when they shortlist or they interview, their destination place, they'll go and look at LinkedIn. So if I'm interviewing somebody and the company I'm working with for a job, so I'm CEO, I do the last interview, and I always go and look at the candidate. And I expect them to see me looking at them. So people who've looked at your LinkedIn profile. But if they haven't looked at me, then that's a question mark that I have for them, because I expect them to do their research. So if they're talking to somebody, what do they know about John O'Sullivan? And I want them to look at me. I want to see in my profile that person's looked at me. Your LinkedIn profile often also just creates this picture about you that I mentioned earlier. And there's a couple of things that affects that. One is the number of connections you have. So are you active? Are you out there in the marketplace? And if you're somebody who has 35 connections and you may be somebody in financial analysis or an actuary, that's fine. But once again, it does show that you are, to some people, not active in the business environment. So it's just something to be aware of there. The activities, are you active on LinkedIn? Have you supported people? Have you said that's great news about your job? So once again, that's a level of profile that people will spot, and they'll think, oh, this person is active on LinkedIn. Look at what they're doing. They're still engaged with their colleagues. And it's just small things that alter and create perception about you. And then finally, some recommendations. It's not vitally important that you've got recommendations on your profile, but once again, the space is there. And, if that space is there, then why don't you use it? And I think the final thing I would just say on here is just a note of caution about the CV that you present to an employer. So, a Word document or a PDF or something, and your LinkedIn profile. So they would expect to see that the entries in your career are the same, and they're consistent. And if they're not consistent, and it might just be a pure, simple error that you've done, but it creates a question mark. So that's what we're trying to avoid, is creating any question marks about you.
Sure. Can I ask you a quick question on that one?
Yeah, sure.
So, someone's just asking, what's better, number of connections or number of recommendations?
Well, there's a LinkedIn answer to this, and then there's a simple answer to this. The simple answer is that when you go onto someone's profile, and I'll talk about this in a minute, you see the picture, you see the headline, and you see the number of connections. You have to scroll down to get to recommendations. So if somebody's going to have a quick look at your profile, then connections is that first impression. If they do think, all right, okay, I'm interested in this candidate, and they're going down further, recommendations are a great thing to have. So I do have people who I've worked with, and when they're job hunting, will contact me and say, John, would you mind spending 2 minutes to put a quick recommendation on for me, and I'll do the same for you if you need it. So they're both important. They just play a different role. Okay. Is that okay, Tracy?
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
Great. So a couple of stages that you can go through to build your presence on LinkedIn. Now, the thing I will say here is that I think we said it in the email that went out. There is so much online that you can go and search for about how to make your profile as better it can be, how you can be on LinkedIn as effectively as possible. You find that LinkedIn do some great advice and guidance themselves, but you just put a simple search into Google, and there's more than you'll ever need. But there's a couple of simple steps. Firstly, to just that's presentable. I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Secondly, to build your network, not just to show. Tracy, just it says my connection's unstable. So if something does start to happen, if you just put your hand up and let me know. So to build your network, not so you can just see that you've got lots of connections, but just to make sure that you have access to people you've worked with, past colleagues, colleagues from other organizations, suppliers and customers that you've had. The third one then is also to build your knowledge. So many organizations will put things around social media sites like LinkedIn and Instagram that they might not put on their website anymore. So a pure website visit isn't enough now if you're going to apply for a job. It's so competitive out there. Most recruiters are looking for you to know as much as possible about their organization before you talk to them. And then fourthly is just engage. And once again, that level of activity is going out, and it's always nice if you say, I've just done this, and someone comes to you and says, that's great, John, really good to see that you're doing that. It's a nice thing to get. We all like it, right? So it's always a nice thing to see when people are not just saying nice things about you, but just acknowledging you, that people are liking a post you put on. And if you're doing that, then people will do it back for you. And then once you've cracked those things, you can then confidently go on your job seeking way. Now, let me cover a couple of those points. So your profile, it is your shop window. It's the first thing that comes up when somebody searches for your name. First thing is make your headline work for you. So you'll see Deborah here, and she's saying connecting great companies with top talent in the flexible blah, 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 blah. So she's put a couple of lines in. Some people will just put, it would put Deborah O'Sullivan, supply chain manager or something. But if you're looking for a role, then that headline is one of the first things you'll see. And at the bottom right, have that slide. Keywords are absolutely important. So if a recruiter goes on and starts looking for potential candidates, then what they start looking for is keywords. So wherever in your profile that you can put in relevant words about your background, about companies you've worked for, because as a recruiter, you will say, show me marketing communications people or internal communications people who'd worked for Nestle, Diageo, food companies, and then they'll start getting those lines. So think of keywords in the back of your mind. So the headline, first thing that stands out other than your name, and it can make an impact. We often get asked about career break and whether you should put on LinkedIn whether you have had a career break. My answer to that is, well, if you don't put that on, what are you going to say? So you're either going to make stuff up, which then doesn't work for you down the line, or you put something about, that you've had a couple of years out of the workplace, and generally people have either been raising a family, they've often moved, they've done some voluntary work, so if there's anything that you can put during a career break in the description of career break in your sort of timeline, and then say that, if you haven't got anything to say, just say career break, coming back to it, and I'll talk about something else in a second. So don't be afraid to put career break, because it is what it is. You've had it, you should, it actually improves your skills. It's something you can talk about, there's no harm there, there's no issue. So can you see where I left off?
Yeah.
So I don't know what the last thing you heard. I think you froze on me, Tracy, and then I thought, no one's listening to me. So we were talking about career break, and don't worry about it. Put it in there. It is your career. It is your life. I think you should be proud that you were able to take that time off and put it in there. I was talking about,
sorry to interrupt really, really quickly, because a few people have just mentioned about career break in the questions, actually. So I think this session, probably we won't go into detail about how to deal with a career break, but we ran a webinar a couple of weeks ago, which was all about career breaks and how to address it. So I will include a link to that tomorrow when we send the email out to follow.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. I was going on to pay attention to your photograph and your background. And that's primarily because it's visual. You're looking at it through a lovely screen full of color. And if you haven't got a photograph, can cause an issue, because people think, why isn't there a photograph? So if you can make it, doesn't need to be professional. It just needs to be a clear shot, not with a cocktail glass in your hand, maybe. Why not? If that's what you want to do, then why not? But and then the background just once again creates that level of interest. Connections, once again, could be an important indicator. Particularly if you are in a communications-based or sales role. The about section is your covering letter. If you think about a CV and you think about a covering letter that you'd put in, you can say I've had a career break in your list, but in your about section you can say that you have had a fabulous career in X, that you are really excited about re-entering the workplace, that you have refreshed your skills, or that whatever you want to say about your current status, you can put it in the about section. And remember, as you'll see at the bottom there, it shows about 3 lines first of all. So pay close attention to those first 3 lines. And if you're saying, you're passionate about returning to the sector that you worked in, you were there for 15 years, you've loved it, and you're excited about returning to work, then that's something that would catch my eye, because it's honest and it's open. Once again, we talked about activity levels, so be visible, at least have some engagement with some people around you. And then job listings, your career that you've gone in, just make sure that you've got everything accurate in there, that there's a brief description, and it's action focused. So if there's a particular achievement or something happened during that time, then take a couple of lines to include it. So very important to get that profile right. A couple of other quick things just to note on LinkedIn. If you do use LinkedIn, you may have seen that some people's profile pictures say open to work, and LinkedIn sort of circle it with a sort of a green circle with this hashtag open to work. And what LinkedIn are trying to do is to encourage you to be visible and to be a visible candidate online. So do you use it or don't use it? I do know some people who don't like the idea of it, because they don't want people to know that they're looking for a role for some reason. But if you are looking for a job, then why not? For me, it's not an issue. And if you just go onto Google, hashtag, how do I use open to work? Then there's a LinkedIn guide which shows you how to use that. There's a couple of quick things just to bear in mind when you're doing that. So first of all, if you're already working for an organization and you're looking to change job, then obviously putting open to work creates a little bit of an issue. Now, what you can do is LinkedIn will offer you 2 options there. One is show open to work to everybody, And secondly, it will be only show open to work to recruiters and people who are looking for candidates. So, however, LinkedIn don't guarantee that that will be the integrity of that 100%. So there may be certain occasions where some people do see it that you didn't want to see it. So just bear in mind, if you are not currently working, looking for a job, please go ahead and use them to work.
Yeah.
The other thing,
sorry, John,
yeah.
really quick question on that, because actually someone's sort of saying, and I can understand this if you've been in work for, before, and this is the first time you've ever used it. If they've got the open to work badge, but they've also seen other people posting comments, a bit like your example of a few slides ago, where, she sort of said, sad news, I'm going to be made redundant. This candidate hasn't done that yet, and she's saying, does it sound a bit desperate, so doesn't want to come across as desperate. So what do you think about that?
I think it's all about tone. I think if you were being made redundant and you went on and said, it's so sad that I'm me along with some of my colleagues being made redundant from this company. I've loved working here for 12 years. I love this sector and all the organizations that work in it, and love to stay involved. If anybody out there has any ideas, then please let me know. If you do that sort of tone and you invite people to support you, then I don't think there's any harm in it. If you're just going, I'm really looking for a job, and you're feeling sorry for yourself, then that's not going to elicit the same sort of response. So it is a little bit about tone, Tracy.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
And then the second thing is that quite often when people have decided to return to work, then they struggle and put their CV together. And sometimes that's just time. But what you can do on LinkedIn is when you go onto your profile and you edit profile, you'll just see there's a little drop down that comes out which says save to PDF. And it will send you a PDF of your career history that you have on there. And you can use that as a sort of an emergency CV if you need it. It's always best to sort of do your own CV, but you can use it. It's a little thing that's quite handy if you just wanted to print it out, see how it reads, see what you might need to change before you create your proper CV, then that's a great tip to use. In the last couple of minutes, I'm going to cover a couple of other very quick things. Building your network. As I said, I think it's a very useful tool to have, is when you have people that you've met. I never invite people to my network that I haven't met or engaged with in some way. So I might have a video call with them, or I might have met them at an event or something, and I'll do that. I don't go around seeing people I think is interesting and inviting them. It happens a lot in sales campaigns on LinkedIn at the moment, but from my own network perspective, I manage it very carefully. However, I think this whole area of reconnecting is wonderful. Make it really easy for people to connect with you. So you can just do an automatic connect, and it says, I'd like to invite you to my network on LinkedIn. But if I receive an invitation like that, I think, so what effort has Tracy put in to reconnect with me? Nothing. If Tracy came to me and said, hey, John, we haven't spoken for years. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn, maybe have a chat at some time or something. I go, that's wonderful. I feel good because Tracy's reached out to me. And secondly, I'd love to accept her invitation because she's made a bit of an effort. That's subconscious. I'm not thinking that. That's my subconscious reaction. So as Catherine Robinson, who's an HR director, said in one of her posts, in September 2012, you'll see there, that's how long I've kept this. I'd like to add you to my professional network on LinkedIn. Really, what I'd like a bit more information than that. So just something to bear in mind. So just quickly in summary, be you. I think it's the most important thing. When you have a presence online, it should reflect who you are and and how you like to behave. These simple areas of build your presence, maintain your presence, and then adjust. So don't forget, if you leave a job, to put on LinkedIn that you've left that job. So what I hate is see people apply for a job, I see their CV, I look at them on LinkedIn, and it still shows that they're working at that company because they haven't said that they finished. And for me, I'm thinking, why are you saying you still work there? Is there something suspicious about that? There probably isn't, but it does make me think, I'm not sure. when you're job hunting, pay special attention to this build, maintain, and adjust. Social media is vocational. You can read everything online, but you only learn by doing. If you make a mistake on your profile, you can change it. You can, you put a post up, you think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. It quickly disappears. And, unless people hunt for it, they won't find it. So you can improve as you go along. And then again, there's massive amounts of help out there. So that was a really quick trot through in 30 minutes. Thank you very much for joining. We're going to do a little Q&A now. If you found it useful, please spread the word about 10to2. That's the only thing that we would ask you to do. And look out for the material that we send tomorrow. We'll do a recording of this on YouTube. And as Tracy said, send out a short summary.